Brandt DXT grain carts have efficient unload speeds, large carrying capacities, unmatched durability, and reliable components that make sure your cart is working when you are. Lead the field with DXT grain carts from Brandt. Visit your local Brandt dealer for more information.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host here on this Tuesday edition of the show. Thanks so much, everybody, for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a big part of your workday. And again, thanks to everybody also listening out there on the RealAg Radio podcast. Well, it's Tuesday. We are 3/4 of the way through the month of July. We creep closer to harvest for sure. And silage crews are running and rolling, and things are going on strong there in these parts. And it's cool and raining again here at the mothership of Lethbridge, Alberta. And I'll tell you what, the temperatures, depending on where you are, you're going to maybe say, well, it's been a hot summer. Some of you may say, well, it's been a bit of a cool summer. We know this. The hottest thing on the planet right now is the Toronto Blue Jays. Yes, sirree. Nice. They won again last night, the opening of the series against the New York Yankees. Great victory. And now I think hold a 4-game lead atop the AL East, which is completely unexpected, completely appreciated. And we are loving every second of it. Great drone shots last night above the Rogers Center. Those are fantastic additions to the broadcast. So today, what we're doing, full show, locked and loaded with Damian Mason, host of the Business of Agriculture podcast. Looking forward to getting his thoughts, his opinions on a lot of the issues that are happening across Canada and the United States when it comes to agriculture. Damian travels a ton, covering, speaking to conferences and meetings. He does a great job entertaining crowds. Got some great insights and a real flair for more of the comedic side as well. Always enjoy talking to Damian Mason. Like I said, he's the host of the Business of Agriculture podcast. He is also a speaker and an author as well. And we're going to get his thoughts here today. If you have any feedback, we'd love to hear from you. Send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. There's probably some things that Damian's going to say that you are going to disagree with. That email address again, shaney@realagriculture.com. Or, of course, the RealAg feedback line is 855-776-6147. Okay, let's take a break. When we come back, we got Damian Mason, host of the Business of Agriculture podcast, right after this. We're joined here by Ron Kluskins. He's AGI's dryer business development rep. At what point does it make sense for me to have my own dryer?
It's a pretty simple answer is most guys can benefit from a dryer because they put their future and their own economics in their own hands. Even a small operator with a couple hundred acres can benefit from an in-bin storage dryer. Yeah. And when guys get to 300 or 400 acres, going to a continuous flow dryer, the economics is very good. They essentially dry for half of what an elevator would charge them.
Is it like a case of matching combine capacity, storage capacity, like before you decide on which dryer to purchase, or how does that work?
In a lot of cases, producers already have some storage bins on the farm, so it's just trying to incorporate a dryer to match the size of your operation, match your combine capacity, and then having some good assistance and good information from dealers.
Make sure you go to aggrowth.com to find out more.
At Proven Seed, we know that farming in Western Canada doesn't just teach us, it shapes us. Here we face challenges with resilience, innovation, and grit born from decades of experience. We battle the conditions again and again because growing crops here isn't just what we do, it's who we are. We're raised to adapt just like you, with varieties grown specifically for your local conditions. Visit provenseed.ca/raised to adapt to hear our story.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio. Hey, introducing CDC Envy CWRS with impressive yields, early maturity, outstanding standability, and a robust disease package. With CDC Envy, your wheat crop will be the talk of the town. Learn more at allianceseed.com, or you can call 877-279-2890. That's 877-279-2890. Okay, let's get to my conversation with Damian Mason. He is a speaker. He's an author. He is also host of the Business of Agriculture podcast. Here's our conversation. Hey, Damian, it's great to have you here on RealAg Radio today.
Thanks for having me, Shaun.
Okay, so tell us about your business. You got the Business of Agriculture. Talk about the podcast and what's going on there with the show and some of the other things you're doing.
Well, I might know some of your people, and I might have I might have crossed paths with some of your people. The good thing about agriculture is we're a small sorority, and that's a good thing here in North American agriculture. So some of your people I may have crossed paths with, but for those that did not, I'm the producer of the Business of Agriculture show. It's in its 8th year. We've crossed about 405 episodes. It releases every Monday and on all audio platforms with our podcast, also on my YouTube channel, which is the Damian Mason YouTube channel. We have well, I've written books like the one over my shoulder right here, a couple of business books and an agricultural book. I speak at agricultural events. That's always kind of been the bread and butter. I started out 31 years ago as a political comedian. I owned some farms in Indiana, and I also work for Extreme Ag, producing the Cutting the Curve show, and also doing events like you and I have seen each other at Commodity Classic and places like that. So that's what we do. In addition to, I picked up golf 5 years ago. I try to swim in my pond, and I hike with my dogs. And I beat the road doing agricultural events. So that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah. What are some of the things you talk about on the Business of Agriculture?
So we talk a lot about outlook and future. You know, my degree is in agricultural economics, but I am not a markets guy. I've made a crack about that, Shaun. Getting excited over a 2.5 cent move in the soybean complex, I can't do it. So big picture outlook, demographics, where population is moving, movements, environmentalism, things that are going to impact our industry, gross amount of oversupply, mindset, the fact that everybody that listens to you and to me has grown up in this business believing you've got to make more bushels, pounds, gallons. And I challenge these mindsets by saying, where are these going to go? So I look a lot about the world, economics, and how this is going to impact us, and then some of the real things. You know, the energy issue, global strife. Goodness knows, even the impact of what's going on between the United States and Canada, and the United States president rattling the cage of our neighbors to the north. So those are the things that we look at. It's not an overtly political speech. It just is, here's this big picture. Let's talk about now the European Union's crackdown on nitrates and what that means, or the European Union's stated objective to be 25 to 50% organic by the year, whatever it was, 2030. What does that mean for us? So I think there's a lot of stuff. You know what? Our people are really good at what they do, but they don't a lot of times connect the dots. And so I guess my presentations and what I do a lot is connecting the dots.
So are you trying to assist producers in finding different ways to market what they're producing? Like, what I hear you saying there is trying to avoid the race to the bottom, right? Where we're always trying to find efficiency and just we're going to grow our way out of this, produce our way out of it. What are you suggesting that they do to avoid that?
Okay, well, first off, there's going to be somebody that's one of your listeners, an Alberta grower, that says, "What's Damian Mason know about growing canola?" Not very much. I'm not an agronomist, and I've driven by canola fields, so in no way am I telling these people how to produce what they produce. But I can tell you, we get so good at the production side that we've forgotten about the promotion side, and we've also thought about the actual marketability. So to answer your thing in that direction, we don't need any more number 2 yellow corn. We're taking 40% of our corn crop last year. We're going to have a bigger corn crop here in the United States than we've ever had, and we burn it. So we invented legislation, lobbied for, used our National Corn Growers Association, our State Corn Growers Association, Farm Bureau, you name the entity, and we lobbied to get a thing called the Renewable Fuel Standard in 2004, enacted in 2005, and to burn up corn. We're so good at making corn, let's figure out a way to literally burn it. We take 40% of what we produce and burn it. So how long is that? When we used to hear the word sustainable a lot, Shaun, sustainable agriculture and sustainability. Well, sustainability also means it's financially sustainable. And I don't know that what we do in North American agriculture is financially sustainable doing it the way we do it now for the long haul. We overproduce, we dream up ways or beg for legislation to burn up what we produce. And we've always said we're going to find a new market for it. Canada has 40 million people. You produce enough grain for 4 times that, right? So exports are very important to Canada. Exports are pretty important to the United States. Arguably more important for Canadian producers than here. What happens when we run out of ships to put it on? And they're saying, what do you mean run out of ships? I mean, there's nowhere, the ship has nowhere to go, because I shot a video and put it on my YouTube commentary the other day. I said, there's nobody on the planet right now that's sitting there with money in their hand that's just somehow hungry. Like, oh, we never discovered you. When we talk about creating new markets, discovering new markets, well, they've already been discovered, Shaun. Canada's selling them something, or America's selling them something, or Kazakhstan is selling them something. So I think that our mindset is, for the first time ever, humanity is not ruled by scarcity. And you could argue that about everything. What do you think this tariff fight is about? There's no scarcity of steel. There's no scarcity of corn. There's no scarcity. The only thing that might be in scarce supply right now is those components that have been gobbled up to perpetuate the EVs. Some of these,
the rare metals,
rare earth minerals, and they're not even scarce. Meaning, there's plenty of them in the dirt somewhere. It's just a matter of we haven't had such demand to create the infrastructure to excavate them and refine them.
Yeah. So you take 40% of that corn crop that goes to ethanol production. Where the heck do those acres go to? That I think that's one of the questions that all growers would probably say is, okay, that sounds great, Damian. I understand where you're coming from, but what am I going to grow then? And that's the challenge.
Yeah, so look at it this way. Well, let's just use corn as an example, because I'm here in Indiana, one of the ice states, and there's corn right behind, literally 60 feet from where I'm sitting is 100 acres of corn behind my house. That looks great, by the way. And if you're a farm kid from Indiana, you get excited about good-looking corn. All right, so the ice states are going to continue to grow corn. The Midwest is going to grow corn. We've expanded the Corn Belt. The Corn Belt now goes into Manitoba. The Corn Belt goes down to South Georgia. The Corn Belt is in Arkansas. My friend Matt Miles with Extreme Ag didn't grow corn until like 2009. So do we need corn from those areas? What about the corn that's in the panhandle of Texas, where they get 9 inches of annual precipitation, and corn's arguably one of our top water-requiring commodities? So we expanded the Corn Belt because of policy here in the United States. It's easy to get insured. It's easy to insure yourself into profitability. So that's why we have this. So maybe the corn shrinks back to growing where it should. My friends in Colorado are going to be mad, but in eastern Colorado, you can fly over it. You do fly over it. So do I. You look down and see circle after circle after circle after circle. We're tapping out the Ogallala Aquifer, which has been, I've been reading about since the 80s, and to grow corn that we don't need in areas that are not really designed for corn production. And you could even talk about it in Canada. My friends in Canada, in North Ontario, they're growing corn. You're like, why? I mean, they had to lay down plastic to get the ground warm enough to get germination in the spring. So I'd say that that's one example. And you'd say, well, I'm a producer. I'm listening to Shaun's RealAg Radio, and I'm a producer. I got to produce where I can make a nickel, producing. Or a loony or a toonie in your case.
Yeah.
I know you have nickels up there. I have some Canadian currency sitting right over here on my shelf, by the way.
We got rid, everyone's flipping out in the U.S. about getting rid of the penny. Canada got rid of the penny a long time ago.
You guys are much more progressive. Let's face it.
You have nothing to worry about. I promise you. You will not miss the penny.
So yeah, the producer says, what am I supposed to do? I've got to do what I can get crop insurance for. I got to do what I'm incentivized to produce, etc. So the mindset shift also comes in. I'm not sure these commodity groups want to hear it, and I'm not negative to them. I've spoken to these commodity groups, Corn Growers Association, soybeans, name it. They advocate for the status quo. They do. They like, hey, our friends out here in Alberta have a whole bunch of infrastructure set up to grow what they grow, and we can't let them go broke. So we just got to figure out a way to burn through this. So I think there's this is not brand new. We've had too much corn since the 1980s. Here in the United States, we invented a thing called the PIC program in 1983. That stood for payment in kind. Payment in kind meant the government paid you in corn to not plant corn. And the idea was to do a double drawdown on the supply by taking acres away and also paying farmers with the corn that was in reserve. Well, that was 1983, Shaun. That's 42 years ago. We had too much corn in 1983. And what are we doing now? 95 million acres at 190 bushels per acre. We're doing the same thing. What's the definition of insanity, as you've been told? Doing the same
doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. We have more of my conversation with Damian Mason, host of the Business of Agriculture podcast, coming up right after this quick break.
It is time for today's product spotlight. I've got Philip Korzak, Director of Sales, Western Canada for Väderstad. There's a lot of uncertainty out there. How is Väderstad and your team navigating that landscape?
We've seen some pretty significant shifts in buying habits across the board, not just Väderstad. We're trying to essentially control what we can and not necessarily spend too much time worrying about things that are outside of our control. Supply chain, we have the ability to engage with our suppliers to be making sure that we're getting consistent product, that the quality standards are still there. We're also engaging with additional suppliers so that if there are issues in the supply chain, that we're not just a single source for some of our components. Staying focused on our planning, having clear communication with not only our own internal staff, but out to our dealerships and our customers so that they understand where we are, what we're doing, and that we can continue to be a reliable partner to both our dealers and our customers. Stay tuned, and I think in 5 years or less, you'll see a lot of different things from us as well as from the industry in general.
At Alliance Seed, every seed starts the story of your success. With Alliance Seed varieties, you're not just planting seeds, you're planting the promise of a prosperous future. Our top-performing wheat, barley, oat, pea, and lentil varieties are tailored to meet the unique challenges of your farm, ensuring high yields, strong standability, and reliable disease resistance. Discover the Alliance difference at allianceseed.com or call 1-877-270-2890.
We're going to get back to my conversation with Damian Mason, host of the Business of Agriculture podcast. But first, tell us about Genesis Fertilizers. With volatile markets and rising costs, now's your chance to be a part of the solution. It's time to secure your future with Genesis Fertilizers. Gain control and ensure access to locally produced nitrogen. Act now to protect your farm's future for generations. Visit genesisfertilizers.com to learn more. And if you missed on yesterday's show, the new CEO of Genesis Fertilizers, Derek Penner, was on the show, so I encourage you to check that out. Let's continue my conversation with Damian Mason, host of the Business of Agriculture podcast. You know, you've really challenged growers in this image problem issue around growers needing to be more business savvy and less reliant on things like public sympathy to create some of that policy. Is this one of your examples you use when you talk about that?
Probably. There's a great deal of respect and admiration, verging on adoration for farmers, and farmers soak it up. Thank a farmer. If you ain't day, thank a farmer. I'm a farmer. I work hard. And I told our people, and trust me, I'm an ag guy. I'm a dairy farm kid, and I didn't come from nothing. My dad was a herdsman milking cows for other people, and all the farm ground I own, I bought. So I'm not anti-farmer. I'm pro-farmer. I am a sort of a farmer. I mean, obviously, but we're the only industry that you go to a conference and they play a video with amber waves of grain and Paul Harvey's voice reciting a poem about how the virtuosity of farmers. So God made a farmer. I've spoken at insurance conferences, and guess what, Shaun? They never said, so God made an insurance agent.
That would be entertaining and fun. It kind of juxtaposition, though.
So God looked down and said, I need someone that can actually put asphalt on a highway. So God made a road worker. We go and pat ourselves on the back about how virtuous and moralistic and God, seriously, we've deified ourselves. We've done this thing where we almost think we're somehow appointed by God. And it's a little much because I say, all right, it's a business. Let's go ahead, and people think, oh, boy, Shaun, you brought in this guy and he's being harsh on ag and harsh on farmers. No, I'm being realistic. You know, they'll think about the truth hurts. Let me give you a little bit of mirror here onto yourself.
Yep.
Generally, we produce stuff for which there's no more demand for. We keep overproducing and oversupplying something for which demand grows by a couple percent a year, depending on what commodity we're talking about, and we're growing yields by 3 to 7% a year in many cases. We do rely on government policy to prop us up. We do have government insurance here in the United States. I know it's a little different north of the border. We do have government insurance policies that guarantee break-even revenue, and it is paid for by the taxpayers. And we then say, yeah, but look at us. We're working hard to grow soybeans. I'd say, that's nice. Guess what? You grew it cost you $1 more per bushel to grow those soybeans than they would sell for. What is the answer? So, no, I don't blame anybody other than I just think that we should maybe stop patting ourselves on the back about how amazing we are at production and say, something's got to give. China came along and bailed us out for 20 years because they more than doubled their consumption of calories. You take 1.3 billion people, which is hard for a guy sitting in a country of 40 million to even fathom. 40 million, and they got 1.3 billion, right? I mean, crazy. It's just 30 times what you guys have. So you take that many people and double their caloric consumption, it feed the horse. So we ramped up production again. Well, China's not going to double their caloric consumption again in the next 20 years. They'd all weigh 700 pounds if that happened, right? So that's where we just got to start saying, yes, we love ag. We are good at it. And yeah,
well, I think, and that's why you see, a lot of times I've heard from a lot of, I hear it in Canada too, but I really hear it in the US from farm groups, everyone talking about India as this like, okay, now that we're having a hard time with China, but India, that's obviously a huge population as well. There is money in India. Mm-hmm. There is a thirst for some of the commodities that we'd be producing in Canada or the United States, but a challenging trade partner. And then you've probably heard this too, where Africa, that's the next frontier. Now that feels a little bit further out than India, but that's another one you hear about. And so we're in some ways, eventually we're going to run out of these new markets, this expanding middle class that we talk about. Now, yep. You and I will probably be out of the business by the time we hit that finite point, but I think it is a real concern.
So what you just said is so typical of our thinking. And again, it's not that we're bad people. Right. It's not that we're bad in the way we think. We think the way we think because we've been perpetually reinforced positively to think this way.
Right.
You can make more pounds of canola, bushels, tons, whatever you want to call it, per hectare in Canada. Well, you know what? That's a good thing. We'll just find another place to sell canola oil. So
renewable diesel. That's where SAF and renewable diesel come in.
Absolutely. Go use canola oil and make diesel. So we've been reinforced to do this for a long time, and an expanding global economy meant that somebody somewhere was hungry and now had a little bit of money. But again, my point is there's nowhere on the globe right now where someone is sitting there with money in one hand and an empty plate in the other. If they have the money, they're being satisfied because the supply globally is there. There's about 9 to 11% of the global population that is food insecure to starving. It's about 800 million people, depending on your count. Shaun, those people are not starving due to a lack of production in Manitoba. It's not because there's not enough wheat coming off of Saskatchewan. They're starving because they have no money. They have no infrastructure. The warring tribe in the next country over is keeping them starving because they want to control them. They're starving because the dictator in charge of their country knows that food is controlled. It's not about production. So I would say our biggest challenge, we thought the biggest challenge was to get to 200 bushels of corn, or to get to whatever that thing should be.
Yeah.
Put 3.6 pounds per day on a Angus steer in a feed yard in Alberta. We thought that was our biggest challenge. Trust me, it is not. Our biggest challenge now is a modification of our mindset that it's no longer about scarcity. It's going to be about environmental concerns, nitrates and phosphates in the water, reduction of our usage of harsh synthetic chemicals and fertility, meeting the customer where they are, and realizing that we can't just keep the more, bigger, more mindset, because, what are we going to do? We're going to start dumping corn in the ocean?
Yeah, but you're not talking about going to some sort of well, you correct me if I'm wrong here, but I'm assuming that you're not talking about going to some sort of supply management system like, say, there is in Canadian dairy, where basically you have to have a license to produce a certain output. That's not what you're suggesting, are you? I
spoke to the egg producers in Ontario.
Oh, I saw that.
In March. I love those people. And they need to have meetings in the summer. Somehow nobody ever wants me to come to Canada when it's nice weather.
Welcome to my problem, my friend. Welcome to my problem.
So here's the deal. I put up there a bunch of the economic stuff, and I said to the egg farmers, I said, is it time to consider supply management for everything? And of course they applauded because it's worked very well for them. I said, but remember, supply management would be the last thing you would want, because you would prefer that a marketplace actually just, you need more houses, somebody builds more houses, and boom, you got it.
Yeah.
Usually the point of equilibrium is found in a market where it's not contrived. But the supply management issue, Shaun, the reason why, of course, it's good if you're existing. Here's the problem with supply management. It has the incumbent effect. Mm-hmm. I'm all for it if I've already got my 400 cows, and I've got my dairy facility, and I've got my kid coming up that wants to take it over, and all of a sudden now I'm preventing new entrants from coming in down the road and milking cows, and it guarantees me a profitable price, and it's never going to be under threat. Now, some people might quibble with that statement, but that's exactly what it does. Supply management means that I'm never under threat, and I've got the incumbent effect. Supply management has another component. It obviously does create distortions to the economics. The consumer is paying more than if there was not supply management. And then there's the third one. It creates an artificial asset. And I think that you get it because you are in Canada. I've explained this to my American friends. They said, I don't even know what you're talking about, this quota thing. And I said, because of quota, a Holstein in Ontario is worth $34,000. Yep. No. A Holstein open heifer should be worth $3,000. I'm like, you don't seem to understand what I'm saying.
It's like the New York taxi. It's like having a taxi medallion.
A medallion, yes. Your old Caprice Classic is only worth $6,000, but to drive that yellow Caprice Classic around in Manhattan, that car is now worth $60,000. No. I swear I've tried to explain it to my American friends, like, there's no way a Holstein's worth $34,000. I said, you don't seem to understand. I get nauseated, have to explain it to Americans how supply management works, because it seems like I grasp it and a bunch of my friends down here don't. So here's the tough part. It creates an asset that's not a real asset. Okay? Our listeners are smart people, but I'll just run through it. Cash, whether it's in a checking account or in a jar buried in your yard, cash is an asset. Stocks, that's ownership of a company. Bonds, that's a debt that you're loaning to, whether it's a municipal or corporate. Real estate, whether it's farm or an apartment building in Vancouver. Crypto, if you believe that, right, is an asset. Art, collectible cars, that's a bit of an asset. Quota. Notice I never named quota as an asset. And that's what's crazy about supply management, because in Canada, you get a loan based on quota. And I've had farmers up there say, no. I've had lenders tell me, no. It's the loan is against the barn. I said, oh, come on. Now, I said, you're reminding my Americans that don't understand the Holstein example I gave. You're not loaning $3 million to me against a $700,000 barn. You're loaning me $3 million against a $700,000 barn and the quota. So quota, the supply management just invents an asset that the world doesn't really recognize as an asset, because I just gave the asset.
We have more of my conversation with Damian Mason, host of the Business of Agriculture podcast, coming up right after this break. Now time for a product spotlight with FP Genetics. Sales Manager Chad Yachinsky. What agronomic support and solutions can FP Genetics offer growers who are considering hybrid fall rye today?
We've got a very experienced team, got over a decade of experience in working with rye in general. Very well-established team that can talk about rye front to back. Calling the territory managers, we got one in every province. We just actually hired 2 brand new product specialists. We'll have a Western and Eastern product specialist that's really tailored towards working with that grower, that retail, the independent agronomist, and providing that next level support that sometimes I think we're missing in the cereal world. Just working with growers to understand the agronomics of it. I know there's a lot of new growers to rye, so it's just how can we continue to educate them. We came up with a production manual last year. Pretty much answers 95% of the questions that have come our way on rye. So anybody that's even considering it, reach out to us. We can get you a physical copy, a digital copy of that production manual. fpgenetics.ca, hybridrye.ca, which is strictly hybrid fall rye, or reach out to all the territory managers, and our information's on there.
FP Genetics brings new seed genetics to Canadian farms. Empowering growers to thrive in ever-changing conditions. Visit fpgenetics.ca and thousands of Canadian growers who trust FP Genetics to deliver innovative, reliable, hybrid fall rye seed genetics season after season. Experience the next wave with FP Genetics. Let's get back to my conversation with Damian Mason, host of the Business of Agriculture podcast. I think there's some sort of happy medium here where you want to still have that environment where we're fostering competition, right?
And you also, Shaun, want an environment where that farm down the road, even though people think I'm harsh because I said you got to stop with this "so God made a farmer" thing, I still love farmers and I love farming and I love agriculture. I don't want that place to go out of business. Right. I don't want these acres to sit idle back here. So yeah, the happy medium.
But we really farms are consolidating across Canada and the United States. That's a fact. Mm-hmm. And there's reasons for that. Mm-hmm. But sometimes I wonder, we spend a lot of time trying to get in front of it. And I think farms are going to, just like every other industry, farms are going to consolidate because the market says they should consolidate. Trying to prevent that can be hard. That's a real challenge.
Well, also in both of our countries, there is still, for some reason, a consumer and a voter and a sentiment among the non-ag populace that this is a good thing.
Right.
The average American knows that ag is subsidized by them, by their tax dollars. The average Canadian knows that if they go to I was trying to think the grocery stores up there in Alberta. I can't think of the grocery.
Well, it's like Safeway. We got stuff like that. Safeway and Safeway.
Well, I was going to say Canadian Tire, which is my favorite store of all, but I don't think they sell milk. Anyway, when a consumer goes to Safeway in Canada and buys milk, they know that they could have driven to down across the border and bought milk more cheaply. Yeah. So they know, but there is a sentiment that they want to prop up farming. And what are we hearing a bunch? Prop up small farmers. And I always kind of wonder, what does that mean to you? Because you ask 100 consumers, what's a small farm?
Oh, that's a wide variety.
Yeah. And then ask them, what's a big corporate farm? Because I even heard on American media interviewing the Secretary of Agriculture, Brooke Rollins. Yeah. And the woman, she was with Fox Business, I think, she opened up and said, now, these big industrial farms are doing quite well, but the poor small farmers. I'm like, well, first off, who told you that? And secondly, lady that's on the TV, define that. these big industrial farms are doing quite well, but small family farms are really struggling. I don't know who wrote that on her teleprompter, but I would say, well, define that. Define big industrial farm? Does that mean they're set up as a corporation? Hell, I got a guy down the road that farms 150 acres, and he's set up as a corporation because of some other business purposes. Define it.
Well, it sounds good. It feeds a political narrative, right? So in that circle, it fits. And like, hey, especially with some of the populist push that we see in the U.S., it's how do we make sure we're protecting the little person in contrast to this big, bad, faceless corporate farm, however you define that. And so it sells. It's not reality, but it definitely sells on TV.
It's not reality. It does sell, and it definitely has a political narrative that works. And, the Canadian producer is going to say, well, Damian, don't be harshing on our dairy or our poultry or our egg business for having supply management, pretending that you don't have certain protections, because you do. Yours are just subsidies and crop insurance that is paid for by the taxpayer.
I mean, what I say all the time is, listen, on dairy, if you look at dairy across, the Europe, the UK, America, and Canada, you basically governments make a decision. Am I going to support on the front end or the back end? Canada supports on the front end through the quota system. America supports on the back end through, margin price protection programs, some of the insurance, the top ups. So it's really a choice. So which one do you prefer? Right?
No question.
I think it's a question.
And not to mention, Shaun, there's usually a new one announced. It could be the margin protection program. I grew up on a dairy farm. There's been so many of these. I have to, when I do my speaking, you asked about some of the things I cover in my speeches. When I talk about the situation of oversupply, a lot of people in my audience that are 30, 40 have only seen ag good. It's newsworthy to them to say, yeah, I heard Grandpa talk about the 80s. He said, I'm not going to pull the grandpa walking uphill in a blizzard. I'm just going to tell you this. I explained the PIC program because most of them have no clue that for 2 years the government bought corn, paid farmers with corn to not plant corn, all that. And I said, have you also heard of the dairy adjustment programs? What? In the 1980s, Ronald Reagan was president. I show a picture of him holding up a big, huge block of cheese. And the exact plan was there was so much milk, the government bought it, turned it into cheese, crappy, poorly made cheese, and stored it in caves. And people say, oh, I don't believe that. I said, okay, look it up. So we've been doing this for a long time. And so then you got to ask the question, how long will the political apparatus or the citizens want to do it? That's where I kind of then wonder. And then are the younger people in ag that have not really seen the depths of hell like we had in the 80s, how much will they want to stomach it? So there's a couple of questions when you look at moving forward.
So what's your advice for the next generation? For those inheriting farms, those trying to enter the industry, whatever scale and whatever that looks like. What when you talk to young producers, what are you suggesting to them?
Yeah, so you put me in front of a Farm Bureau's young farmer and rancher audience. Yeah. Say a couple things. Not being mean. I'm not pulling the grandpa walking uphill in a blizzard to stories, but you generally have not seen ag bad. If you think that 2016 was bad, trust me, you have not seen bad. You better really gird yourself up financially. Farmers, as you said, getting bigger, consolidation is happening. You better be as good at your desk as you are in the tractor. You better be as good at your desk with your financials and talking to bankers and going through all of your numbers as you are at walking around a field with a spade, because it is a business, and the consolidation, strained environment of economics will favor the business-minded and business-savvy operator that says, if you want to go and hang on you want to go and drive around because you just think driving tractors is cool, good. You'll probably be doing that for the neighbor as a hired employee 10 years from now. Second thing or third thing I would say is, depending on your financial position, if you inherit a bunch of capital, you're probably okay to just be a commodity producer. There's somebody in Saskatchewan says, hey man, I've got 20,000 acres here. There's government programs, whatever, India, those kinds of things, buying our pea protein products, whatever.
Yeah, pulses, lentils, yeah.
I would think if I were that age, I would be thinking in terms of diversification. And here's the thing. Diversification used to mean whether it's your part of the world or mine, you farmed and you had 3 different crops or 4 versus just 2. And you also had the dairy set up, and maybe you fed hogs.
Yep.
And if you were really diversified, your wife was a teacher and she got you insurance. That's what diversification looked like 40 years ago. I think the diversification, if I were a young person, assuming I came into it with some capital behind me, like most do, and I'm not being mean, but most farms, 25 years old walking into a farm, you're not doing so with
100%.
$2 in your pocket. Diversification, I think, Shaun, looks like this. We own a trucking company. We own storage units over in that town right over there. And we have 4 residential apartment rental buildings. And people would say, well, Damian, that all requires money to diversify like that. Well, so does buying that 160 acres. We in ag always think, got to get bigger, buy more acres. And the return may not be there. What if if you're a young person in agriculture, your diversification shouldn't just be buy more acres. Maybe it should be buy another business that actually flings off cash flow at a 2 times rate that it would if you put that money into 160 acres. And okay, you won't have as many acres as the neighbor, but you know what you'll have? More cash flow. I think diversification and the financial side of it is where if I'm 25 coming into this business, I'm just doubling down on that.
You know, one of the things that actually that strategy helps, because I'm right there with you, right? It's diversifying your investment. So instead of reinvesting all of that free cash flow back into the main operating asset, you're getting it onto a different balance sheet, which has the benefits in the current term. But also, you know, when you get to transition stage and you need to deal with some of those off-farm children, those assets off the farm balance sheet, they can help you in that transition deal that you're working on inside your family farm unit. Yeah. So there's long-term benefits too.
Yeah. Now all of a sudden, and this is pretty foreign for me because of, like I said, my background, I'm second generation American and my dad milked cows as a herdsman. So, that was never a situation that I walked into, but I see it all the time where it's the same old farmer mentality of I've got to get bigger, I've got to have more acres, and we can have bigger equipment. Like, okay, your financial position is fine. Why wouldn't you take 10% and start flinging it over into this other thing? Other businesses would consider doing that. And like you said, if it comes to the situation where then there's got to be a split, okay, this kid gets the farming set up, and this kid over here gets the storage units and the apartment buildings.
Yeah.
So let's face it, we're going to probably have a taxpayer, a consumer that will prop up, and it's national security. What did they just roll out here 2 days ago in the United States? The Secretary of Agriculture started talking about national security and ag and all that. So there's probably going to continue to be the support, but that doesn't mean huge profits. And it's remarkable, like you just said, you talk to a lot of ag people, they'll go and they want to buy that land down the road and pencil out a 1.6% return using right now prevailing interest rates are 7 or 8. Why not use 7 or 8% money and buy the convenience store in town that has a 42% margin? That's where I would look.
Yeah. We've got more of my conversation with Damian Mason, host of the Business of Agriculture podcast. We'll be back right after this. Built on over 100 years of seed innovation and unwavering commitment to farmers, Pioneer 100 Series canola hybrids deliver a step change in yield performance and agronomic traits. This isn't just better canola, it's different canola. Pioneer 100 Series. Contact your local Pioneer sales representative or visit pioneer.com/100 series to learn more today.
Soil health is under pressure, but real solutions start below the surface. Black Earth offers a full suite of humic solutions, from high-purity granules to powder, liquid, and soluble formulations, all powered by pure Humulite. Formulated for performance, backed by consistency, trusted by growers worldwide from one of the world's rarest reserves. Grow stronger with the power of Black Earth Humulite. Learn more from Mine to Market at blackearth.com.
Of course, you can hear the entire conversation with Damian Mason, host of the Business of Agriculture podcast, by listening to the RealAg Radio podcast, where you can find wherever you download, stream, view your favorite podcasts. I encourage you to continue to tell your friends, your neighbors, your peers, anybody about RealAg Radio as this community of listeners and audience continues to grow for sure. Okay, let's get back to my conversation with Damian Mason. I know I have said to audiences sometimes, and I put a disclaimer out in front of it just so I don't get too much crap thrown at me. Mm-hmm. But I've said, one of the areas of improvement here in agriculture is we need financial farm literacy to increase.
Yeah.
And some people nod, and some people take real offense to it. And I'm not trying to be critical. It's just I think it's this. You could speak to an entrepreneur crowd. If you were talking to the Independent Bakers Association of America, if that even exists,
yep,
you'd be saying the same thing. It's an entrepreneur issue.
Yeah, it's a business owner issue. And then what you're just discussing there is sometimes I was really entrepreneurial and I was also really good at baking goods. Yep. So I baked goods and I was so entrepreneurial. I was good at selling. I was always really an outside the box thinker, and I got contracts with 100 different places and they have all my stuff. Now I'm going to hand this business out to my kid. Well, did your kid work as hard as you? Well, no, I guess I was kind of guilty of spoiling my kid. Did your kid go out there? Was your kid in there every Saturday morning at 4 a.m. Rolling out dough? Well, no, I didn't want. And then what about the money? Like you just said, the financial literacy. Did you make your kid take finance classes in high school and college? Did you make your kid actually start running a checkbook when he or she was 15? No, I didn't. So it's not a surprise when these farming operations are second, third. What do they pride themselves on? We're a fourth generation Saskatchewan operation. And okay, did fourth generation get pushed to understand the money? I agree with you. And it's not just farmers. Like you said, it could be a baker.
Totally.
It could be, what was there a stat here a couple of years ago? The average American, if they needed $500 tomorrow for a car repair, would be scrambling to figure out where to come from. And you're like, oh, it's because they're poor. Well, I don't know. They have 17 tattoos and a $9 pack of cigarettes. I'm not sure that they're exactly. I'm not sure they're exactly making good decisions. How about we say that?
I was at a meeting yesterday, and somebody said on the crowd. Now they had just to set the context here. They were directly marketing their beef to consumers. Okay. So that's their diversification is, hey, we own a ranch and we got to deal with the local butcher shop. We're going to do some marketing of our ranch beef directly to consumer. But one of the things that they said was the consumer demands they know where their food is produced. And I was sort of like, okay, we say that. I don't know if I believe that as much as I used to.
I don't believe it for the same reasons I'm sure as you. Because you and I have a lot of similar takes. And also, we get around a lot. That's another thing compared to our audiences. And again, we're not being mean. It's just that I connect dots because they get so caught up in producing bushels that when I say, well, there's this article in the Wall Street Journal and they're interviewing this person about Canada's prime minister and where this trade thing could end up going. And then they say, I don't know anything about that. Well, there's another thing. Our consumers are as misunderstood by our agricultural industry as any. Okay, here's a great example. You just said they want to know where their food comes from. And we say that. We tell ourselves that.
Yeah.
I don't think the average consumer gives a hoot in hell. If they want to know that it's safe, they would like it to be high quality, taste decent, and have a story that appeals to them. I'm a Vancouver mom. I buy my stuff at Trader Joe's because it's not a great big Costco, Safeway, Walmart, whatever, fill in the blank.
Whole Foods. Kind of thing.
I go to Whole Foods because I know that food doesn't have a bunch of harsh chemicals on it. And so all of us in ag, Shaun, say, all that matters is how cheap it is. I'm like, if cheap is the only thing that mattered, there wouldn't be 3,000 Whole Food stores in North America. There's a story component to it. I don't know that all of them care about where it comes from, but the story has to resonate with that consumer. And we get this wrong because we keep telling them, well, go to an ag meeting. You know what you got to do? You got to tell your story. So ag people get on their phone and they go to their ag following, which is who they all have, and tell them how amazing ag is. I'm like, well, your friend in Nebraska that farms is pretty well bought in. You don't need to keep telling them the benefits
Preaching to the choir.
These commodity groups do it all the time. If I went to the Canadian Canola Association meeting, somebody would probably get up and tell everybody how amazing canola is. I'm like, I think everybody here's pretty well in with you. I think they agree.
Yeah. No doubt. And I think the consumer is this diverse. It's not just this one monolithic thing. Right. You think about the diversity and the variability in the industry of agriculture. The consumer's even more so. You've got ethnic differences, regional differences. There's wealth differences.
Which I was going to say, socioeconomic being as important as anything. Socioeconomic, and that's a big one. You know, that thing I used to share this with if I'm in front of an audience of producers, a lot of my audiences are insurance, finance, whatever, processing. And I just got out my smartphone. Second time I use this as an example, but say I get this thing out. And I walk up to somebody in the audience and I say, hey, grab your smartphone. I say, do you know where that was made? No. Do you know how it was made? Like, do you know all the components that went into it, where the components came from? Do you know the environmental background on that smartphone? Okay. Do you really know how it works? No, you really don't, do you? Okay. What if I told you an 11-year-old in a third world country made $4 a day assembling parts for that? Would that bother you? It'd bother you a little bit, but would you stop using it? No. So what do you really care about with your smartphone? You care that as soon as I'm done talking, you can get on there and check your email, do your social media, take a picture of you and a selfie, and you care that it works. We're out here telling our consumers, Shaun, all the time about, well, I'm a fifth generation Alberta farmer and I grow canola. And here's why we spray it with all those chemicals. We spray with all those chemicals because it's easier for us. And by using all these fertilizers, it means we get more bushels per acre. So the consumer just heard, okay, you're spraying it because it's easy for you, not because it's good for me. You're telling me that you're a fifth generation farmer, and that means you inherited a bunch of stuff. I didn't inherit nothing. You just told me that you make more of it. I just read that we're figuring out subsidies because we have too much of it. We're terrible at this. Use the phone example. You know what the consumer wants? They want it to work. They want their food to work and be as available to them and the offering as convenient as their smartphone.
Dude, I use a different example, but same message. You pull up to the gas pump.
Yeah.
When you're about to pump the fuel, now I look at the percentage of ethanol because I know about that and I talk about that on my show here. But for the most part, I just want it to, when I swipe my credit card, put the nozzle into my Jeep, and I trigger it, fuel flows out. That's all I really care about, and it's not too high priced. And obviously that's all relative. I don't think about the oil field worker. I don't think about the railway that got it to that point. I don't think about the refinery. I think about none of it. I don't care. I just wanted to make sure my Jeep is full so I can get to my destination.
So that's, again, and if I'm harshing on agriculture, it's because we keep going to the meetings where we talk and play God made a farmer, and if you ate today, think a farmer, and we need to tell our story. And I think that we might have an outsized self-value that our consumer largely does not. I love my cell phone example, but I love your gas example even more. Trust me, the oil field workers don't go to conferences where they play So God Made an Oil Field Worker. And you care about its availability. You know when you'll care more about it? When it's not there. So that we do have that part right.
Yeah.
By golly, make sure that grocery store shelves are stocked. We understand supply and production as much as anything. That whole COVID thing got people rattled, people fighting in the grocery store aisles over a piece of hamburger or a roll of toilet paper. Other than that, make sure the supply is there, it's readily available, and I agree with you.
Yeah, before we wrap up here, having said all this, there's tremendous opportunity in the industry right now. Like I feel so fortunate in my job and similar to yours where you you get to see the industry from so many different angles and geographies. And I love getting put into settings where I don't know a lot about. Like, I was in my first cotton field last summer, and it was just awesome because you're learning about how, like, there's some similar challenges, there's some different challenges. But one thing that always sticks with me is what is exciting about it is there is opportunity if you're able to put the whole package together, the production, the financial side of it, trying to sort out how am I going to market this? Is it in the commodity system? Is it, maybe it's moving up the value chain and doing it differently? There's a lot of room here for a lot of different shapes and sizes of operations.
There's optimism, even though maybe some of my stuff comes across as negative. I'm just saying the mindset has changed. And the reason I'm not negative, I'm a realist, because we have mass production mastered of commodities. Why should you be optimistic? We have a consumer in places like North America that is still affluent, even though we've got food, inflation in the last 5 years and all that. It's still an affluent consumer that goes to places like Whole Foods and wants a differentiated, more expensive, value-added product that speaks to them because of whatever that reason is. There are so many opportunities. We have a consumer, Shaun, that is willing to go online and buy stuff. Never existed 10 years ago. We have a consumer that wants to pay more in many regards. Oh, that's not true, Damian. Oh, really? Water is free out of every tap in North America. Yet how many billions and billions and billions of dollars of plastic bottles of water are sold? So you've got these opportunities. There's the other one. I think when I look forward, I think there's commodity corn for ethanol or livestock feed. And then there's this other product that's for human consumption. There's going to be, because of traceability and technology, I think the excitement for guys like you and me should be, in 5 years, we might have a complete, the Chicago Board of Trade may not like this because they really essentially invented commoditization, right? Number 2 yellow corn is number 2 yellow corn, period, done. What if it's canola for oil to go to biofuel? Right. And there's a different canola that has a different set of omega-3s and a different set of growing conditions that we know creates a different canola, which is better for human health. And then we get off the hook for the whole seed oil thing. There's oil that goes to make fuel, and there's oil that goes to humans. And there's a value associated with that. I think that we'll get there because of the traceability.
Well, look at edible beans, right? There's the commodity soybean market, and then there's the IP soybean market, where Canada and parts of the U.S. do flourish in this area, where it's grown a different way, different production system, marketed to the food market in places like Japan and the rest of Asia for the tofu, right? And so it does exist. It's just the prices aren't as liquid as and available to us as they are in the commodity system.
Some places, the movement back to beef or beef tallow, there's some opportunity there. I've actually predicted that lard will get a run again. This will be good for the hog producers. All of a sudden, you got this RFK character going around talking about the evils of seed oil. I'm like, hell, we didn't eat this much seed oil when we were kids. We used lard and things like this. So remember, in affluent countries like yours and mine, the consumer is always to the next trend, fad, craze, whatever.
Inventing problems.
Which also invents profit opportunities.
Yeah. You tried hard to get an interview with RFK. I saw that on LinkedIn. Did you ever hear back?
Never got one response from any of his people, because I would have loved to have any of his people. And I'm a supporter of much of what he says. When he says Americans are fat, he's right. Actually, he didn't get on my anti-tattoo kick, but if tattoos were an asset class, we'd be in good shape there too, but they're not. Americans, the diabetes situation, when we're 11 to 12% of diabetic in this country, and also he's got a big thing about the school lunch, and that thing has been bastardized by so many different groups over the years to try and sell an extra, pound of stuff. So there's a lot of good about what RFK is doing, but he's also a little bit out there.
There's some nonsense too, man. There's some nonsense too.
Yeah. So it I keep up with a lot of non-ag people, and I think that that's, again, something that guys like you and I, because of our travels, might help us with. When my non-ag people started saying, hey, Damian, are you really anti-RFK? Because you know what? Me and my neighbors just had drinks the other night, and we can't think of a bad thing about it. Well, those seed oils are bad for you, and all that glyphosate's bad for you, and Americans are out of shape. And he's right. I said, and food dyes. And I said, sure. I said, but there's a few things that are a little bit radical here also. And so there's...
Well, there's lots of science to show that seed oils are not bad for you. There's a lot of science out there to show that glyphosate isn't bad for you. I've said lots. I follow a lot of different fitness influencers on Instagram, and I'll tell you, he is looked upon as like the messiah of fixing all of the problems in the world.
Yeah. He's definitely got some real devoted Kool-Aid drinkers behind him, and if you and I get together and eat French fries that are fried in canola oil, I don't think that that's going to make us unhealthy. And
there's worse things we could do, Damian.
Meth is, if you stay off the meth, I think that helps.
It does help. Yeah. Hey, man, this has been awesome. I really appreciate you taking the time to spend some time here with RealAg Radio. Everybody, please check out the Business of Agriculture. Where are some of the other places they can find you, Damian?
I stay on LinkedIn. I'm on social media, Twitter, Facebook, DamianMason.com. And I pass through the countryside quite a bit doing my speaking, and every now and again I see you. And we're going to do another thing. I'm going to get you on the Business of Agriculture, and I think we're going to have to take a different direction. And you and I are going to single-handedly get the U.S., Canada ag situation handled. Done.
Cool. That would be fun. We should definitely do that. Damian Mason, the Business of Agriculture. Thanks so much, Damian.
Thank you.
Damian and I covered a lot of ground, and I would love your feedback. Are there things that we talked about that you really think need to be built upon, you agree with? Maybe there's some things here that we chatted about that are going to drive you a little bit crazy, a little bit nuts. Maybe you got a counterpoint to it. I'd love to get your perspective. We've heard Damian's. Now let's get yours. Send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com, or of course you can always call that RealAg feedback line, 855-776-6147. Thanks everybody for getting real and getting connected with RealAg Radio, and we'll of course chat again tomorrow. Cheers everybody.